7 strange things discovered by archaeologists. 7. Royal burial of the kids with disabilities. Researchers have known about the sung here burials for about half a century. The burials, which date to the mid-Upper Paleolithic, are located on the northeast outskirts of Vladimir, Russia, and were excavated from 1957 to 1977. They found out that the people were buried at the site by hunter-gatherers 34,000 years ago. On further studying, the researchers were stunned to see 2 adolescent boys aged 10 and 12 showing signs of disability were buried adjacent to each other with royal pieces. In total, there were 10 men and women buried at Sunghear, but the 2 boys have, by far, the most spectacular riches of the lot, the researchers said. On the chest of each child were 10,000 mammoth ivory beads, 300 pierced fox teeth, around 20 armbands, 16 ivory mammoth spears, carvings, antlers, and human fibulae. While on the other hand, the adults were buried with either little or no royal treasure. This ancient society buried disabled children like kings. 6. Ashkelon sewers. Well, as the name says, hundreds of tiny bones were found in the sewers below an ancient Roman bathhouse in Ashkelon, Israel. At first look, it was thought that the bones belonged to chickens or other small animals. However, after investigating, it was discovered that these bones were of humans, infants to be precise. On further examination, they found small skulls belonging to both genders. The archaeologists never expected this. An examination of the remains by Patricia Smith and Hila Kahila of the Hebrew University revealed that most of the bones discovered in 1988 were intact and that all parts of the skeletons were represented, suggesting that the infants had probably been thrown into the drain soon after death. In ancient times, Romans did not care for baby girls but treated baby boys preciously. The number of infants, all of the same age and with no signs of disease or skeletal malformation, suggested infanticide rather than a catastrophe such as an epidemic, war, or famine. Researchers believe that there must have been a brothel there. 5. The unlucky whistle. During the excavation of the Aztec temple situated near Mexico City, archaeologists found human skeletons holding onto a whistle made out of clay, frog skin, and sugarcane. Later on, they also discovered that several other bodies had skeleton whistles also. Initially, they believed these were toys. However, further investigation revealed that when the whistle was blown it created a sound similar to the scream of 1,000 corpses. Many theories suggest that the whistles were blown during the rituals of the human sacrifices to God and war times. The instruments are known as whistles of death because historians believe they were used to help guide sacrificial victims on their journey to the afterlife. Another theory holds that hundreds of the instruments were used in unison to scare enemies during battle. Some experts even say that the Aztecs used sound vibrations to treat illnesses because some of the whistles produce infrasonic sounds that are too low for the human ear to recognize. Such sounds can have a dramatic impact on heart rates and states of consciousness. 4. Sanborg Massacre. While studying a 5th century Swedish site, archaeologists found a human skeleton. The skeleton was just lying on the floor of the house and no one had buried it. On further investigation, the archaeologist found 26 more human skeletons. As the number of skeletons increased, it became apparent that our excavations were exposing evidence of a brutal massacre in the late 5th century AD. During this episode, large numbers of people were annihilated and their bodies were left where they fell. The signs on them showed that they were executed using swords, axes, and clubs. Researchers still haven't found much about the cause of the incident and the one responsible for it. The contrast between shiny jewelry and sudden, inhuman demise has made this one of the most startling archaeological discoveries in Scandinavia over recent years. 3. Athens mass grave. The mass grave was discovered by the workers who were constructing a library and an opera house in 2016. In the process of digging, they unearthed an ancient Greek cemetery. They found over 1,500 skeletons uncovered, but the disturbing part is yet to come. The smaller chamber had 80 human skeletons whose hands were shackled above their hands and had been killed in the same manner, with a fatal blow to the head. Several bodies were stacked on each other. The theory suggests that they could have been followers of Cylon, who was a former Olympic champion, and who sought to rule Athens as a tyrant. But Athenians opposed the coup attempt, and he and his supporters were forced to seek refuge in the Acropolis. The archaeologists believe that these people were the followers of the failed coup in 632 BC and were punished for their disloyalty. 2. Pet cemetery. Even in ancient Peru, it seems dogs were a man's best friend. While all other discoveries were about the human skeleton and a little unsettling, the archaeological department found this cute. A Peruvian anthropologist was excavating a 1,000-year-old cemetery south of Lima. To her surprise, she didn't just find human skeletons. She also found 43 dogs that were buried in the same cemetery by the people belonging to Kiribati culture. The Kiribati were farmers who lived from AD 900 to 1350, before the rise of Peru's Inca Empire. All of them had been arranged in peaceful postures, as if they had fallen asleep, and were wrapped in textiles for burial, just as most humans were at that time. Nearby ceramics and other artifacts suggest both dogs and humans were buried around 1000 CE. These furry pets lay beside their respective owners, and many dogs were buried with treats and blankets. Gwillan, director of the Centro Malki, the Bioanthropology Foundation of Peru, said the dogs are known as Kiribati shepherds for their herding abilities. 1. Headless skeletons in Dorset. Any mass grave is a relatively rare find, but to find one on this scale, from this period of history, is extremely unusual. The excavation of the Weymouth Relief Road in 2009 in Dorset revealed a disturbing fact. They found more than 50 skeletons of men who were stripped naked and decapitated before throwing them in the pit. Most of the men were found to be 18 to 25 years old. The youngest was in his early or mid-teens, while the oldest was over 50. The men's heads were also neatly stacked on one side, and the archaeologist believes that these men were Scandinavian Vikings. This mass grave in Dorset was a burial ground for extreme Viking mercenaries, according to a Cambridge archaeologist. At this time Vikings were constantly attacking Anglo-Saxons on the English south coast. There are various theories as to why these men were executed so inhumanely. Some of the skeletons have now gone on display at the British Museum in London.